A Senate committee is conducting investigations. These investigations will go on, I understand, over a period of many months. I respect the right of the Senate to conduct those investigations. We will cooperate. We will cooperate fully with the Senate, just as we did with the grand jury, as we did with the FBI, and as we did with the courts when they were conducting their investigations previously in what was called the Watergate matter. Come out. I have confidence in all of the White House people who have been named. I will express that confidence again, but I'm not going to comment on any individual matter that the committee may go into. Let me say, with regard to the committee, too, I do not intend to raise questions about its conduct. I've been very pleased to note that Senator Ervin, at least this is the way I read what he says, has indicated that the investigation will be bipartisan, that it will look into charges that have been made against both election campaigns, and that is as it should be. He has also indicated that he, as a great constitutional lawyer, will accept no hearsay, that he will not tolerate any guilt by innuendo, he will not tolerate any guilt by association, as long as the committee conducts its investigations with those very high guidelines I tried to follow, incidentally, in his case. Not perhaps as well as I might have, but many thought it was pretty well. But in any event, as long as it's conducted that way, I do not intend to make any statements with regard to matters before the committee. That's for the committee to look into. Now, as far as these investigations are concerned, there are all kinds of information, charges, et cetera, that have been made, that will be made in the future. I could comment upon them. Mr. Ziegler could in the future. I will not. He will not. And the reason that we will not is that when the committee completes its investigation, we will then have comment if we consider it appropriate to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement with regard to our liaison office in Peking. The office will open approximately on May 1st, and Ambassador David Bruce will be the chief of the liaison office. In the office will be approximately a total complement of 20, of whom 10 will be at what we call the expert level, the others, of course, for the support level. The two top assistants, top deputies to Ambassador Bruce. However, we should note I call him ambassador, but his title will be chief of the liaison office, will be Mr. Jenkins from the State Department, who, as you know, is one of our top experts on Chinese-American relations in state, and Mr. Holdridge from the NSC, who is the top man in the NSC advising in this area there. A word about why Ambassador Bruce was selected. We called him out of retirement because I thought it was very important to appoint a man of great stature to this position. The Chinese accepted that view themselves, and we expect soon to hear from them as to the appointment of the man they will have as his opposite number here in Washington. Another reason that I selected Ambassador Bruce was because of his great experience. All of you know that he's been ambassador to Britain, and ambassador to Germany, ambassador to France, and also headed our delegation in Paris in the Vietnam talks in 1971, 72, and early parts of 72. During the 60s, the United States went far down the road of the permissive approach to those charged with crime, and we reaped a terrible harvest, the greatest increase in crime that this country has ever had, explosive, to the point that law and order, so-called, became a great issue in 68, still a great issue in 72. Now, under these circumstances, I believe that it is essential that we have not a permissive approach, but an approach where certain major crimes are concerned, that the penalties will be ones that will deter those crimes. It is my belief that they will. As far as I'm concerned, I oppose, as you know, the legalization of marijuana, although I have advocated a more equitable type of punishment, which will fit the crime. I am for the mandatory criminal penalties with regard to hard drugs because I think we have to move vigorously in this area. And in terms of the capital punishment, I do not think the Secretary of State of the United States can make a statement to the effect that terrorists in the Sudan should be executed, when if somebody picks up some diplomat in the United States, we would give him perhaps 20 years, 30 years, and then have him out on parole in 5 years. So under these circumstances, I am taking this line. I realize many honestly disagree. I respect the disagreement, but that's what I believe. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else.
Mr. President, you have concentrated on peace in your administration. Now, don't you find an inconsistency there with continuing to give arms to India and Pakistan and perhaps 100 other countries around the world?
Well, first, we're not giving them, we're selling them.
Isn't that
which of course, I just wanted to be sure that we understood the difference because of all of the concern about aid. But the point that is involved in the India-Pakistan thing has been a very difficult one for this administration because it involves commitments that were made before we got here. Those commitments were made during the Johnson administration. I do not criticize the fact that they were made, but they were made. As far as we were concerned, once the war between India and Pakistan began, we cut them off, as you recall. We stopped all economic assistance, or not all, but some economic assistance to India, and we stopped all military assistance to Pakistan. Now let's look at the numbers. $83 million in economic assistance to India and $14 million in military assistance to Pakistan. We have maintained that embargo up to this point. The difficulty was that there were contracts that had been made. The materials had already been in effect sold, and under the circumstances, we felt that it was time to clean the slate. And so what we have done, we have the Indians are getting their $83 million in economic assistance. The Pakistanis are being allowed to go through with their purchases of the arms, non-lethal arms and spare parts. Now, as far as the major problem, and Ms. McClendon, you put your finger on the major problem, and that's peace in the area. This in no way jeopardizes the peace in the area. India's, as after the war, which broke Pakistan in half, India's superiority is so enormous that the possibility of Pakistan being a threat to India is absurd. All we're trying to do is to seek good relations with both, and we trust in the future that our aid to both can be ones that will turn them toward peace rather than war. I should also say that in India's case, while our aid there, our $83 million is economic, India, as you know, purchases quite significant amounts of arms from the Soviet Union and also has an arms capability itself. So there's no problem in terms of creating conditions which could lead to another outbreak of war by providing for simply keeping a commitment that the United States had made for the sale of spare parts and non-lethal arms to Pakistan.